Grand day, my benefits boss family. Today is Saturday, March 9th, 2024, and I have a new recording for you regarding this form, IRS Form 52. What I'm going to do, make this pretty short and sweet, but I do have some information I'm going to exert. Because this information, you can look up for yourself, which I always like when people do their own due diligence and do their own research. Don't go by what I say because I might be wrong. Although the information I'm reading from, I don't think is wrong. Because I'm going to start this off with a statement from the congressional record for the House of Representatives. And I want you to look this up because I'm going in today regarding labor and wages, which brings us to why you're able to file the Form 4852. First of all, I'm going to give a little astrology. Today is a 9-day. You just go by the date, the 9th. It's also a new moon. So as we beginning in one phase, a new moon, you want to start your new intention. What are your new intentions? What are your new endeavors? What is it that you want to do? So by the time the moon is at the half stage, you're pretty much done. And you just can sit back and relax and wait till the fullness of the moon happens. Now we're also at the ending because 9 in numerology is a number of endings, because in order for one thing to begin, something has to end. So I'm guessing that most of you who are interested in this IRS form 4852, I'm just going to start calling it a substitute form, because it's a substitute form for the W-2 and a 1099-R or any other kind of 1099 dealing with any kind of retirement income, such as annuities, which I was an insurance broker for the longest. So that would pertain to those people who took out annuities and 401ks and pension plans and things of that nature. But back to number 9 is also the number of expansion. It's also the number of, terminating and completing and fullness, because it's the last number in the number cycle before we start all back over to number 1. So because it's a 9-day, we also have a time where we're going to expand on our knowledge. We're going to expand on the things that we want to begin to do. So let's look at it this way. As you're ending the cycle of being a slave to the system, we're going to end that cycle as we begin and put out our new intentions today and begin a new cycle. So write down your intentions. What is it that you want to see manifest or come to full measure by the half moon? Now, I heard someone say that the first quarter phase of the moon is the most dangerous time. It reminds me of a baby, who's just now beginning to walk, and they know just enough to get in trouble. But enough of that. My intent is to fulfill you and give you enough information where you can do your own due diligence. I'm hearing something outside. I hope those are... They sound like fireworks on a rainy Saturday night. Nevertheless, let's get into it. When you hear the word excise, what do you think about? What does it sound like? What other word does excise sound like? Well, excise is excess. So what and where is the liability for that tax? Let me put my window down just a minute. I had actually been doing a live, that would have been really interesting. Okay, so let's get into this. Labor is not the income tax that everyone refers to. The Congressional Record for the House of Representatives, Volume 89, Part 2, page 2580. 1943 also, page 1943, defines income tax, which states, if, in brackets, income tax is an excise tax with respect to certain activities and privileges which measured by reference to the income which they produce. The income is not the subject of the tax. It is the basis for determining the amount of the tax. Title 31, Section 321D2, that for the purposes of federal income, estate and gift taxes, property accepted under paragraph 1 shall be considered as a gift or bequest to or for the use of the United States. There is no mention of a mandatory tax on labor type of income. Now, it says, what is subject to an excise tax? What and where is the liability for that tax? I once heard that the enforcement arm of the Internal Revenue, which is you and me, service, is the alcohol, tobacco, and drug. That agency that's over alcohol, tobacco, and arms, or something of that nature. The first section in the Internal Revenue Code that addresses any requirement, and is also the section that the IRS mentions in their Privacy Act statement, is Section 6001 and 6011, as written in the IRC of 1986. Okay, now you can go and read Section 6001 and 6011. But what I will tell you, that whenever you're reading any of these codes and it refers to a person, that automatically exempts you and me. Okay? Because we're not persons. And if we're not persons, we can't be subject to. And subject to is we're not under anyone's arm or anyone's thumb to do anything. But I digress. Now, I'm going to go into this form 4852 as far as the information that relates to this form. I'm not reading the form because, again, I'm not showing anyone how to do anything, but I will look over the documents. If you want to send your document after you've done them to me, you can send them to me privately. I do take donations. You can send it over at PayPal, which is at my channel on my PayPal, and you can send me a Cash App. But I will not do the taxes for you, but I will show you how to do them. And it is simple. It's one page. I've actually looked at these forms over the years, and they're pretty interesting. What I'm going to do is attempt to put a link in under my my description, in the description of what the form. Matter of fact, do your due diligence. Go look at how this form has changed over the years, and it's pretty interesting. But it always remains one page. So anything that's one page that the Internal Revenue Service does, it must be something that's meant to be hidden. Okay, if an employer or business affiliate has filed a corporate, partnership, or other tax return, the W-2 or 1099 is affidavit evidence as the financial officer signed the master return under penalties of perjury. Consequently, that has to be the point of attack. The evidence has to be controverted. Can the IRS personnel testify concerning legitimacy of a W-2 or a 1099? No. Only those with personal knowledge are competent witnesses. And that does not just adhere to the IRS. That's any agent or anyone coming after you or coming to do something that you don't want them in your business for. Objection: no personal or no first-hand knowledge. How do you attack legitimacy of the W-2 or 1099? You submit a request to the employer or whoever is asking that the W-2 or 1099 be corrected or withdrawn, or insist that whoever is responsible for its disclose taxing and liability statutes that authorize withholding or otherwise reporting taxable income. As long as there is a good faith effort, the request can be attached to the 4852 form, and by supporting it with an appropriate affidavit of fact, you have established viable, if not contravening, testimony. Let me read that again. How do you attack the legitimacy of the W-2 or 1099? You submit a request to your employer or whoever is asking that the W-2 or 1099 be corrected or withdrawn, or insist that whoever was responsible for it disclose the taxing and liability statutes that authorize withholding or otherwise reporting taxable income. Now, no IRS agent can act as a withholding agent. No one can act as a withholding agent. As long as there is a good faith effort, the request can be attached to the 4852 form, and by supporting it with appropriate affidavit of fact, remember, it says the W-2 or 1099 is affidavit evidence. You have established viable, if not contravening, testimony. If the employer fails to rebut or correct the affidavit stands as the surviving and preferred evidence. If IRS wants to dispute your evidence, whoever is responsible for making the W-2 or 1099 must disclose the two taxing authority elements. In other words, the IRS would have to call whoever made the original form as the witness to support the W-2 or 1099. Unless or until there is a procedurally proper assessment, there is no tax liability. Until the tax liability is established in compliance with what the law prescribes, all collection initiatives are, this says illegal. I'm saying unlawful. Next, how do we go about securing funds of sums that have been erroneously and sometimes unlawfully collected? The Form 8275 disclosure statement supports whatever amended return is filed. Now, the Form 8275 may be something that is still in existence, but you will find it, and if so, look it over. It is a disclosure statement. You can use that. It says we will support that with an affidavit of fact, and if we have had to ask an employer to correct the 1099 or W-2, the Form 4852 will back that up. So I knew there was something other than that this form could be used for, other than just getting back taxes. Because, like I said, it's a form that hasn't changed very much. It's still one page. Now, it's 2 pages now because of all the instructions. But I think I've seen one as far back as 1970 something or 1980. And it hasn't changed. It's still 1 page. So based on this information, it looks as if that form will back up another form. The IRS doesn't have anything similar to administrative due process rules. Okay? Consequently, they don't appear to be in compliance with Title 5 USC sections 553 through 559. They rely on the 4 corners of whatever document they have, which is to say, it is impossible to exhaust administrative remedies with the IRS. So their noncompliance has the potential for creating extreme legal jeopardy for their IRS personnel. Any judgment by any court that lacks subject matter jurisdiction is void on its face. While a defendant might waive personal jurisdiction, he cannot waive subject matter jurisdiction. Subject matter jurisdiction can be raised at any time. There is no time limitation. The void judgment is vacated. It is not reversed by appeal. It may be attacked with the existing case or by an independent action called a collateral attack. Now, there's a form called a Form 23C. And I'm saying look these things up because I'm putting the information out here and I'm not the one who has to do the work because I work for myself, so I don't have a reason to file a Form 4852. However, unless or until there is a procedurally proper assessment, there is no tax liability. If I remember correctly, the Form 23C was a form that the IRS had to have in its possession in order for someone to be able to claim that they have the authority to make an assessment. And it has something to do with the method of assessment that was used and the certifications that went into it. But I won't go into that. But it does talk about it being an assessment, meaning that someone is authorized. It has to already be authorized. And if it's not provided, then the taxpayer can claim that the assessment is invalid. And then, of course, that puts it back onto the IRS or the agent to prove otherwise. Okay, I'm going to go into another. I may upload something regarding a sample, but again, I'm not a tax attorney, and I do not give tax advice. I will tell you, however, what I would do in a situation, because more than likely, I've already done it. So what kind of taxes are they? We talk about excise taxes. Notice that income taxes are called federal, not national income taxes. The government can only impose a direct tax when it's apportioned. A direct tax is a tax on the ownership of property, such as lands, autos, inventories, and shares of stock. The government can only assess an excise tax if it is uniform. Uniformity refers to geographic uniformity, not to individual uniformity. An excise tax is an indirect tax imposed upon the performance of an act or upon the enjoyment of a privilege. Now, if it has been declared that the terms excise tax and privilege tax are synonymous, producing ore or producing oil, producing textiles and other consumables are all excise taxable acts. Why is that? The measure of the tax is the value of what is received in an exchange for the product, what is realized in the exchange. For resale, the resale is an act which is subject to taxation. Someone is making money. Some proceeds are being made. An exchange has taken place. Resale taxes are measured only by the gain. Under the modern application of the tax law, the IRS treats the sale of any property for more than its basis as a sale for profit, on the theory that the property or the product became capital when it was purchased by the owner or merchant who now intends to sell it again. On this theory, the act of selling is taxed, measured by the profit on the sale. However, this application is a novel one as to one's capital assets. So it sounds like to me that the excise tax, the excess tax, is only dealing with profit, trade, or gain. Now, I don't know this because I haven't read the entire IRC, the Internal Revenue Code, but I can pretty much go with some of the pretty learned professors that I've heard speak on this matter. And they said that nowhere in the income or in the IRC is the word income defined. It also talks about how a federal worker or a federal employee, if you're not considered a public official, then you're not, there's no way to measure what that tax is. Remember, we talked earlier about the basis of all of this is how the amount of the tax that is realized, not the fact that there's a tax on labor. It's only on gain. So, or if you work for the government, such as someone who's a president or vice president or congressperson, the House of Representatives, they work for the IRS, the VA, the Veterans Administration, or some other governmental entity. Those are considered federal workers. Therefore, that is a direct tax because it's from federal. And although it's still not based on capital gains, they're still in the employ of the federal government. Because again, notice it says a federal tax, not a national income tax. Okay? They are excise taxes upon certain activities, and they are measured by the income, the gain, which these activities produce. The income tax is therefore not a tax on income as such. It is an excise tax with respect to certain activities and privileges, which are measured by reference to the income which they produce. The income, which again is not, unless you can find it somewhere, is not the object of the tax. The income is not the object of the tax. It is the basis for determining the amount of the tax. When dealing with owned assets which produce gain, like oil wells and coal mines, are not considered to produce gain until the gain is converted into another form of asset or cash by reason of exchange. Corporations, partnerships, and all licensed activities operate not by right but by privilege. Privileges are taxable. Now, we as private folks, we don't have privileges. We have rights. We came here with them. They call unalienable, or back in the day, we said unalienable. But I like unalienable. If you are allowing yourself to be licensed for an activity, which is truly a right, you are exposing yourself to unnecessary, hint, excise or excess tax liability. So does that mean that you shouldn't get a license? Does that mean when we say these people who so-called practice law or practice medicine, they have to get a license, therefore they have to pay tax? Technically, unincorporated organizations exist as a matter of right under the common law. However, like the sovereign citizen or private citizen, unless the trustee or management dares to proclaim immunity, taxes will be exacted. The problem has to be corrected to correctly define income. The corruptions of that definition, confusing them with the meaning of source, have opened the doors to taxation of the sovereign citizen. The code does not define income. It refers to gross income, but that usage is not for purposes of definition. In fact, one wonders what is the purpose for the reference. It appears to be a listing of sources of income, but the items listed seem to compromise both items of income and specifications of sources without differentiating which is which. For a definition of income, it is essential to look for the United States Supreme Court. It has already told us that not everything which comes in is income. Notice the play on words. Come in coming. Everything that comes in is not income. It is said to be gain or profit from labor or capital or both combined. As will be seen below, labor is property, just as capital. However, labor is private. This means that gain from labor usually comes from the work of those you hire rather than from your own labor. Back in the day, I heard the older people say, I work on my own accord. It has been recognized that the capitalist is able to deduct his own labor as a cost before facing a tax on any capital gain. So if my work is my work in my own private manner, how can someone assess a tax? What is taxable income? Well, you ever heard of the word wage? We know in the Bible it says, oh, the wages of sin is death. What would they use that word? Why didn't they say the phases or the components or the ways? It said the wages. Everything has a purpose. Okay, I'm going to go down here, skip down a little bit. I want to get into the wage effect. I'm going to skip around a little bit because sometimes skipping around actually has a little bit more, it has a way to make your mind kind of, hit a little bit, wakes your mind up. Okay. Another inherent flaw in this taxing process is that it ignores the fact that you have an unalienable or unalienable right to work. If it's unalienable, that means it can't be taxed. It cannot be liened. Working is not a privileged activity. Since the right to earn money is a fundamental right, it cannot be revenue or revenue taxable. Cases without number have recognized that the right to receive earnings for labor cannot be the basis for a tax. Cases have acknowledged that compensation for labor cannot be regarded as profit. In addition, there is a tacit admission in the code that, quote unquote, wages are not truly income. Although it is doubtful that any federal court will concede the admission, Section 61A does not list wages as an item of gross income, neither as income nor as source. Instead, it refers to compensation for services. I like the word payments, without disclosing whether it is an item of income or a source. If this seems confusing, don't be alarmed. Clever men have worded the IRC deliberately to be as confusing as possible. Indeed, courts frankly acknowledge that even the attorneys have only scant knowledge of the tax laws, and this is not surprising when it is considered that the code is drafted in such a way that only one with 31 years of education can understand it. Okay, so a wage. If you look at this form 4852, I'm going to give you some areas to look at on the form. As I said, I'm going to make this pretty quick. Okay. Now, because the form has changed over the years, the form that I'm looking at is from 2015. Now, the 2015 form, line 7, which is still the same, line 7, is the form W-2. Now, remember, the 4852 is a substitute form. So it says enter wages, tips, other compensation, and taxes withheld. Well, wages, tips, and other compensation. Now, if someone, such as an employer, has issued a W-2 and it stated that you made wages, this is your time to rebut that nonsense. So on that line, because there is no wages, you have to zero it out. Now, remember, Social Security, Medicare, and FICA. Now, notice on these older forms, they don't have FICA listed, but it's still a tax. And it's probably going to be under your federal income tax. So because you're not supposed to have Social Security, Medicare taken out, you're supposed to zero that out as well. Because as we just read, those are not wages. Now, if you look at the form, I'm looking at the 1040 I mentioned was a 2015. The 4852 is a 2014 form. So it's interesting. It says under line 7, under form W-2, it says wages, tips, and other compensation. Social Security, wages. Medicare, wages and tips. So anything that's a wage we just discovered from the reading that no matter who says it, you can rebut it. Remember, we mentioned the form 8275. Go look that up. But these are to be rebutted. And the way you rebut it is on this form, because this is a legal, quote unquote, form. Now, on the area of federal withheld tax, federal income tax withheld, state income tax withheld, put down what someone said. Put it down. Put down what the Social Security tax was withheld. Put down the Medicare tax that was withheld. And you want to do this because notice the word wages on one end and then it has tax on the other. That has to have some kind of differentiation. It can't be the same because they didn't put them all on the same line. They differentiated. Medicare, wage, Social Security, wage, and over here it says state income tax or federal income tax, Medicare tax. Okay. Over here it says on the line 7, Medicare wages. On the right of that, it says Medicare tax. So therefore, there has to be a difference. Now, I'm going to go to another year. Now, on the 1040 is where you're going to make things pop. Okay. So because on the 1040, used to be on the 1040, line 7 said wages, salaries, and tips. Same thing on the line 7 of your W8 substitute form. 0. It's funny. When I said 0, I automatically thought about the days when I was in basic training, and we would be doing our push-ups, and if we get on our knees because we had been down there pushing up too long, if we get on our knees, the drill sergeant would say 0. I don't care if you did 20, you got to start over. So you think you're going to still be on your knees? Okay, let me get back to this form. I'm going to go to another form. I'm going to go to a 2016 form. The book that I was reading from is his name is J.D. Stamper. He's a Juris Doctorate. And he created this book called The Law Club, which is the first, and I became aware of this book back in 2007. That was the first time, somewhere around 2010, when I even saw the term Form 4852. And I was doing taxes at that time. I was paying taxes, and I was filing taxes. But I didn't work for anyone. I was pretty much working for myself. So I never had a reason to file the form. But what I have found is that the way the forms are filled out, this particular form, is pretty much the same across the board, no matter what year the form is. Again, it hasn't changed that much. So line 7, you correct. If you received a wage, you didn't receive a wage, because we just defined the code just defined what a wage was. Now, there's a section of the code, 3401A and 3121A. Those are saying that the tax was derived from a W-2 sent to me. Well, remember we talked about having firsthand knowledge of the facts, having personal knowledge. Well, if someone sends you something, is that firsthand or secondhand? Am I to rely on what someone said, or am I to do my own due diligence? Now, the way I would approach it is, someone wants to rebut. Well, luckily, they can't rebut, because we just talked about and read how that an agent cannot rebut. And if you were to put them on the stand, what are they going to say? Were they there? Did they see you working? Did they know how many hours you put in order for them to come to the basis of the amount of this tax? I don't think so. No one's going to come into a state court, because that's where you would take an IRS agent, into the state court, not the federal court, because they're not federal. However, the IRS is a debt collector for the U.S. Treasury or the Treasury Department or whatever you want to call it. They fall up under the 15 USC 1692, which is the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. And that's why when you send them something, they have to send you an acknowledgement within 5 days, because that's what the FDCPA states. Now, there is another tax code that I use, and I will make that available privately. And in addition to the other form, the other codes that we just mentioned, the 3401A and the 3121 A, you can use those, okay? Use those. But you can also use another code that I will not say online because I am aware that I am on a public forum. But the W-2 was issued before the wage errors was noted. Did you hear that? The W-2 was issued before I noticed there was an error. So it's up to you to correct the error. And anytime you're dealing with a 1099, you always hit that corrected box. Because once you correct it first, no one can do it last. Hopefully this information provides some clarity on the form. I hope it helps someone. But I also want to leave you with one extra piece of information. And it's going to come to me here in just a second. In the meantime, this Form 4852 substitute form is a game changer. And as we noted, it can be used in other areas, not just to complete your refund process. Okay. Now, let me read this little area here. And I got this out of Withholding the Truth. So the other place that I received information about this form was from Peter Hendrickson. He has a site called losthorizons.com. And it's a very good site. If you want to go and see how the form is done, go there, look around, and do your due diligence. It's a very good site. Pretty much anything you want to find, you're going to find it there, and someone has already done it. But luckily, I already had information from this Law Club book by J.D. Stamper. He also has a book called Fruit from a Poisonous Tree. Very inspirational. At first glance, that sounds is a withholding, requirement of withholding. Okay, we talked about wages, the word employee. Okay, I'm going to just leave this here. I'm going to read it, and I hope you find it eye-opening. Requirement of withholding. In general, except as otherwise provided in this section, every employer making payment of wages shall deduct and withhold upon such wages a tax, determined in accordance with tables or computational procedures provided by the Secretary. Who is the Secretary? The Secretary of Treasury. Any tables or procedures prescribed under this paragraph shall. Now, when you see the word shall, it's not a all, it's not a I might, it's not can I or will I, it's you better, okay? At first glance, that sounds as though it covers everybody, doesn't it? After all, wages is widely used as a generic word for, quote, unquote, pay, much like the way income is widely used for all that comes in. However, looking a little deeper into the bowels of this subchapter, we find Section 3401, definitions. A, wages. For purposes of this chapter, the term wages means all remuneration. Remuneration, other than fees paid to a public official for services performed by an employee for his employer. Employee, 3401C. For purposes of this chapter, the term employee includes an officer, police officer, employee, federal employee, or elected official of the United States, a state, in the uppercase state, whether it's a uppercase S, or any political subdivision thereof, or the District or Columbia, or any agency or instrumentality of any one or more of the foregoing. The term employee also includes an officer of a corporation, CEO, Vice President, a United States corporation defined in Section 207 of the Public Salary Tax Act as a corporate agency or instrumentality, is 1. A majority of the stock of which is owned by or on behalf of the United States. B, the power to appoint or select the majority of the board of directors. Now, an instrumentality is you. Okay? The United States is a corporation. Therefore, all that works for the corporation are subject to. Does that mean you? So I read you what a wage is and what an employee is. So do you think you got some money coming back? You think? Don't let that money get away, y'all. That's your money. Go get it. Don't make no apologies. Don't look back. Don't pass go. Don't pay $200 for shit. Go get your money. Don't ask questions. Don't make your paperwork look standoutish. Just go get your money. Now, that doesn't just include this year. It doesn't include this year. So therefore, you got extra money coming because you got 3 years you can go back for, including this year. So that's 4. Okay. I saw a young man, he was 18. He had filed his first 4852 at 18. He was working at McDonald's. And when he got his money back, he was so excited. But more so than anything, he was excited for the fact that he did it himself. So surely if an 18-year-old, his first job, can do this, I'm sure we can too. Thank you for stopping by the channel. Contact me if you will. You can contact me. Leave a comment, share, like, subscribe below. Hopefully this helps someone. And again, High Vibes lives here at Benefits Boss Channel. Hope this helps someone. Grand day and have a great rest of your weekend. Peace out.